Have you ever felt?
Are you listening? Damn.
Both been here too long. You can't go back to Ireland or Poland or England, and I can't go back to Africa. And we will live here together, or we'll die here together. And it's not I am telling you. Time is telling you. You will listen or you will perish.
You ever felt?
Are you listening?
In this country, there is a social contract when it comes to our children. We have agreed to protect them because we see them as helpless, incapable of protecting themselves against predators and violence. When we look at our children, we immediately feel an emotional connection to their innocence and a need to keep them that way as long as possible. Sadly, studies show that this is not how this country views our young black boys. Instead, young black males as young as 10 are very often seen as less innocent than their white peers. They are routinely mistaken for older than they are and perceived as guilty. They also face an increase in police violence if they are accused of a crime. So, how did we come to these statistics? 176 predominantly white police officers whose ages averaged around the late 30s and were from large urban areas were tested on two specific levels: prejudice and unconscious dehumanization of black people by comparing them to apes. For those officers that saw black people as apes, the researchers found that when they looked into the police officers' personnel files, these individuals were more likely to have used force against a child, a young black child, while this child was in their custody. What they also found was it wasn't prejudice against black people that caused this behavior, but instead it was the fact that they had dehumanized them that led to the violence against these children. But this is just a skewed view on the part of law enforcement. The study was expanded to include 264 white female college students. These young women were also given a test similar to the ones the police officers took. But instead of the prejudice and dehumanization aspects, they were asked to rate the innocence of black, white, and people whose races were ambiguous. The people ranged from infants to 25 years of age. When they viewed the children, they were seen as equally innocent up to the age of 9. But it was at the age of 10 that black children specifically became less innocent looking. 10. These same students also inaccurately judged the black children as older by as much as 4.5 years. But what I'm telling you is not new. And for most of us, we've had to navigate a world where our children, brothers, cousins, and loved ones became a threat simply for coming of age. The age 10. Ask any black person about the talk, and regardless of whether they have a girl or a boy, they will know what you're talking about because each gender gets one. I got one. My daddy got one. My cousins and uncles got one. But for young black boys, the talk is both a necessity and a heartbreaking reality. For those of you who don't know what the talk is, let me share this gist of it with you. Young black boys and black teens are informed of how they are viewed by this world simply for having the skin that they're in. They are guided on how to behave in many situations out in the world. But the most harrowing part of the talk is when they are advised on how to behave when they come in contact with law enforcement. And yes, you might say, all kids get that talk, but it is significantly different when you have to tell your child that because of his skin color, that there is a higher chance that his life is in danger simply by coming in contact with the wrong police officer or wrong individual. Not only are these young children and men instructed on how to behave when dealing with a police officer, they are also informed on how to behave in public spaces, stores, restaurants, simply walking down the street. Young black boys have been stopped by the police for descriptions as vague as black boys running, 2 black males in jeans and 1 in gray hoodie, black male in athletic gear. And this implicit bias is why this talk is necessary. Young black males are watched simply for being in areas that are seen as not for them, certain neighborhoods, stores that look to be too expensive for them to afford. When we see and treat these young men as older than they are, we also put responsibilities and premeditated actions on their shoulders that they're not even aware of. They are literally fighting back against people's preconceived notions of them without ever knowing what that notion is. It's like walking into a room where you are the only person blindfolded and you're told to make sure you don't bump into anyone or anything. Being perceived in this manner on a consistent basis and being hypersensitized to how you are seen in a negative light is at best anxiety-inducing. This anxiety rears its ugly head in the interactions with your daily environment from the minute you leave your house. But mental stress is not the most tragic thing that can happen. And honestly, it can be a welcomed alternative to the greatest fear that a family with a young black male can have. That is why the perception of young black children as being older than they are is so horrifying and sickening. Because when you see children as older than they are, when you see children as animals, when you see children as disposable or interchangeable, you immediately take the humanity out of them. And this leads to making it easier to see them as an immediate threat to your safety. Tamir Rice. On November 22nd, 2014, a 12-year-old child decided to take a toy gun and play with it in a local park. 911 was called and 2 officers responded to the dispatch call. When the officers pulled up, the car hadn't even come to a complete stop when Tamir was shot by one of the officers. From the minute the officer opened the patrol car door until Tamir was shot, the incident only took 2 seconds. Trayvon Martin. On February 26, 2012, Trayvon left his father's house to purchase a bag of Skittles and some iced tea. George Zimmerman, who was out patrolling his neighborhood, saw him and immediately felt that Trayvon was a suspicious individual. Even though George called the police, he decided to follow him anyway. While on the call with the police dispatcher, he was told not to engage or continue to follow Trayvon. George Zimmerman completely disregarded the instructions, and instead, he decided to get out of his car and pursue him. This pursuit ended in the death of 16-year-old Trayvon Martin. What do these 2 tragedies have in common? Besides the obvious, existing while black, walking while black, and implicit bias based upon race, what they have in common is the overwhelming fact that young black males are seen as threatening and suspicious after the age of 10. Once again, 10. I hope that registers with everyone. A child in the 4th going into the 5th grade is often seen as adult-like and a threat to society. Tamir and Trayvon had reached the age where they were no longer children in our eyes. Because of this, they were morphed into this country's idea of someone who was inherently criminal. So where does that leave us? What I'm saying is not new, and honestly, at times, I feel as if my words are falling on deaf ears. But that only means that I have to keep speaking up and speaking out. So rather than lay down and give up, I would like to introduce you to groups that take this issue to heart and are working very hard to affect some kind of change and extend hope to young Black men. This is only a small amount of groups created to close the gaps between how the community is perceived, how it has been taught to perceive itself, and its true potential. Let me know if you would like me to send you more nonprofits that are out there. Please let me know what you thought about this video in the comment section. Until next time, remember, this fight is not just for some of us, it is for all.